Origin Chance, home to Rex, and this is Caesar versus the Helvetii, 58 BCE by the channel Historia Civilis. Yeah, okay. Somebody said that I missed one or two episodes there about Cater and things. Yeah, but I'm doing, Julius Caesar playlist, basically, from this channel. It's a literal playlist that he created, about 27 episodes of it. So I'm doing that. Maybe one day I'll do the whole Rome thing from the start of the, founding of the Rome all the way up until the Julius Caesar or something. But right now I'm doing Julius Caesar one because I wanted to do that, good Julius Caesar series for a long time. Everybody says this is the best channel for it. So yeah, I agree. Even though previous episode just had some, some charts and whatever, that animation with blocks and things, that was so exciting, right? I never thought I'd be excited by just seeing some blocks move around, but that was that awesome. Yeah, that's what this one. Remember, if you like my reaction, don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out the reaction. There's a link in the description. Check out Kazo playlists like History, Ulisakashi Production, Interhistorian, CGP Great, Here Zoo, Kazgazar in a nutshell. And yeah, that's what this one.
Remember back to Caesar's year as consul, when there had been a coordinated effort to sabotage his career by assigning him to govern the woodland and country lanes of Italy.
Yeah.
After achieving dominance over the Senate, he had replaced this dead-end job with the governorship of two provinces, Illyricum and Cisalpine Gaul. Governing two provinces at once was unusual but not unprecedented. Then, when the governor of neighboring Transalpine Gaul unexpectedly died, he had that province assigned to himself as well. By the way, for the sake of simplicity, I keep on using the word governor, but the Romans used the words proconsul and propraetor, which doesn't exactly mean the same thing. Basically, if the Senate took a former consul and put them in charge of a province or at the head of an army, they were now a proconsul, which legally granted them some of the old command authority that they used to possess when they were in office. Command authority, the Romans had their own word for this too, imperium. A person with imperium was authorized to channel the power and authority of the state in order to enact their will. So governors, generals, judges, and high-ranking politicians literally embodied the Roman state. Diplomats also had imperium. There are famous stories about the over-the-top arrogance of Roman diplomats, talking down their noses at foreign kings. But look at it from their point of view. If Roman diplomats thought that they were the embodiment of the Roman state, it would be inappropriate.
Alright, so imperium just means that you represent the state itself, so you are the state in a way for whatever position you have, whether you're a judge or you're a diplomat or something. So is that it? And proconsul just means you are leading a particular state now, like how governors do basically. But more than that, like how Caesar was the leader of the Senate. He was holding the fasces. Now he does the same thing for the states that he has, right? So now he has 3 states. So he's basically leader of those 3 states.
For them to bow to a foreign king. It's easy to see why the Romans were awful diplomats. Another thing to keep in mind going forward. A person with imperium was immune from legal prosecution. You could always charge them later as a private citizen, but not while they...
Romans were known for that, right? Romans were known for, being bigger than anything. Oh, what a barbarian. Get out of here. I'm the diplomat. Why would I bow down to you? I'm Roman.
So, on January 1st of 58 BCE, Caesar became the proconsul in charge of Illyricum, Cisalpine Gaul, and Transalpine Gaul for a 5-year term. These 3 provinces had a total of 4 legions assigned to them, which at full strength would have been around 20,000 men. Caesar immediately began raising 2 more legions at his personal expense, bringing his total up to 6 legions and 30,000 men. Last year, when Caesar had secured new provinces, he had also given himself the power to appoint his own legates, which was usually the Senate's job. Just a reminder, a legate was the person in charge of each legion, so in this case he had 6 jobs to fill. He gave one of these positions to a man named Labienus. Caesar and Labienus were the same age, and they had become good friends during the Catiline conspiracy, when Caesar had served as praetor and Labienus had been a tribune of the plebs. During Caesar's year as consul, Labienus had served with him as praetor. This made Labienus eligible for a province of his own, but instead he chose to come with Caesar and serve as his right-hand man. Later, when Caesar would get distracted by the day-to-day governance of the provinces, Labienus would be left in charge of the army. When circumstance required Caesar's presence elsewhere, Labienus would govern the provinces in his place. When Caesar's final term as governor ended, he would have Labienus appointed his successor. Near the beginning of the year, Caesar received word that
He was the right-hand man, basically. He did everything that Caesar would do in his absence, basically. The guy probably know how great Caesar was. That's why he stuck with him.
a large tribe, the
And
Helvetii,
probably because, Senate hates Caesar by now, because what Caesar was. And knowing Labienus was Caesar's man in the previous times, trying to do anything in the Senate might be dangerous for him. So he's like, go with, I guess, Caesar, I guess.
had uprooted and were migrating west. On
Yeah,
their
they
current
burned their
trajectory,
houses.
they were going to cut through Transalpine Gaul. Caesar ordered his legions to mobilize and to travel to the edge of Roman territory near modern Geneva. There he had them break down a bridge over a river that the Helvetii would need to cross. When the Helvetii realized that there were 6 legions standing in their path, they formally requested passage through Roman territory. Caesar sent a response, saying something along the lines of, "Wait there, I'll think about it." A week passed in silence. Finally, Caesar sent a messenger denying their request, at which time they discovered that the Romans had secretly constructed a 28-kilometer line of defenses in front of the river.
Whoa.
What was Caesar doing
Wait a
here?
minute, in front of the river? I thought they did behind the river in their territory. So when Helvetii crossed the river, there was a wall there. That other channel, I think, said that, right? Or maybe I'm getting that wrong. But seriously, look at that. Bob the Builder, Julius Caesar right there. Building bridges, building walls like it's nothing. He just built a 28-kilometer long wall. Yeah. So basically, if Donald Trump had a portrait of Julius Caesar in his office, he might have built his wall.
If you want to give him the benefit of the doubt, you can. He would argue that the Romans were allied with many of the Gallic tribes in the area, and they didn't want 300,000 militaristic Helvetii moving into their territory and upsetting the delicate balance of power. But in my opinion, Caesar wasn't acting in good faith here.
Yeah, money.
He had started mustering extra legions before the Helvetii had even entered the picture. If you ask me, this had more to do with Caesar settling his debts than it did with maintaining the status quo. The Helvetii were upset by Caesar's refusal. Some of them were like, to hell with this, and decided to independently cross the river anyways. Caesar had anticipated this. He didn't have enough men to defend the entire 28-kilometer line at once, but wherever a group of Helvetii tried to push, Caesar and his men converged on that location. The Helvetii made several attempts over several days, but Caesar repulsed them every time. The Helvetii were beaten, and decided to go around Roman territory by marching north. Before too long, some of Rome's Gallic allies started to get word of a massive Helvetii migration coming their way, and sent panicked messages to Caesar asking for assistance. With this thin justification, Caesar set off in pursuit of the Helvetii, and caught
So Caesar did a dab to clear, right? Back in his home. So every soldier's like, should we go home? Nah, man, I need money, otherwise they'll break my legs. I can't go back home right now. I need something. So let's beat Helvetii. They go back to somewhere else, and they're like, "Oh, Lord Caesar, would you help us? Or would I ever? I'm the personification of justice. I'm coming to save you."
up with them at the Arar River, which we now call the Saône. The Helvetii were having difficulty with the river, and a simple crossing had dragged on for weeks. Caesar launched a surprise nighttime attack, but due to low visibility and general confusion, he was not very successful, and most of the Helvetii on his side of the river were able to retreat safely into the woods. The next morning, Caesar and his men started construction on a bridge across the river. They were finished within hours, and the next day Caesar and his 6 legions had crossed the river, and they were on to tracking the rest of the Helvetii.
Julius Caesar, diplomat, military general, and a builder. So basically, as soon as everybody ran away, it's like, okay, combat part of this area is over. There is no combat anymore. The battle is over. And he just suddenly put his yellow helmet on and just started to check blueprints. All right, let's build a bridge now.
When Caesar caught up with them, the Helvetii sent a diplomat to meet with him. They didn't really accomplish anything. They just ended up airing grievances at each other. It now seemed pretty clear that there was going to be a battle. Caesar assembled his...
Yo, Caesar, we have no beef with you. We just want to cross. You wouldn't even let us do that. We went somewhere else and you're still attacking us. What the fuck? Yeah, you attacked me 50 years ago. You just attacked me a few days ago. Yeah, but you're attacking the people that, that I care about. Those people there. What's their name? Yeah, whatever. Those people I care about. I have to defend them.
his legions and sent his 4,000 cavalry forward to screen his infantry as they advanced. The cavalry walked right into an ambush. The ambush was small in scale, but the Romans still took heavy losses and were routed. This was Caesar's first proper military encounter in Gaul, and it ended in defeat. But it could have been a lot worse. At least the cavalry took the brunt of the attack, and were able to disengage when they were beaten. If the infantry had walked...
Look at that, Caesar in Gaul. Then this sentence of Caesar in Gaul has been known as the great triumph of a great mind, great general. Everybody, anytime if somebody says Caesar in Gaul, they're just like, oh yeah, the pride of Rome, right? Caesar, the badass, dominated Gaul. It started with a defeat, small battle, whatever it is, it started with a defeat. So great guy like Caesar, his war started with a small battle defeat right there. And then obviously he's going to cross everybody.
Into this, it could have gone a lot differently. After this, Caesar must have felt humbled, because he moved much more cautiously. The Helvetii continued their migration north, and Caesar shadowed them the entire way. Whenever they stopped moving, the Helvetii would deploy for battle, but Caesar never took the bait. This went on for several days. One day, the Helvetii ended their march in front of a steep hill. Caesar pulled Labienus aside, and together they hatched a plan. In the middle of the night, Labienus was to march off with 2 of Caesar's most experienced legions. The plan was for Labienus to march all the way around the Helvetii position in the dark, and take the hill behind them before the sun came up. At dawn, Caesar would march out and deploy for battle. Labienus was to hold his position until the moment he saw Caesar's forces come into
That is kind of fucked up, right? Hills and high ground has always seen as really crucial point when it comes to battle throughout the generations, centuries. So Helvetii basically going near the mountain and just staying there while knowing that Caesar is basically tailing them, and they take defense position every time they stop because they know Caesar might attack. If they're under that much pressure, if I were Helvetii, I would go on top of the mountain if I can. Just get the high ground. That's better when you're about to be doing battle with anyone. Staying near a mountain like the hill mountain, whatever, it's kind of risky.
Contact with the Helvetii. When that happened, he was to charge downhill and hit them in the rear. A key ingredient to this plan was trusting that the Helvetii wouldn't be stupid enough to attack uphill, even though they would outnumber Labienus's detachment 7 or 8 to 1. If they did attack uphill, that would screw up the plan a little bit, but all Labienus would need to do was hold off the Helvetii until Caesar could come to the rescue.
There's a reason why they're saying it's an uphill battle. It's not easy to fight uphill.
That's why he had the 2 most experienced legions with him. So, in the middle of the night, Labienus marched off with his legions, and at dawn, Caesar and the remaining 4 legions marched out of their fortified encampment to meet the Helvetii, making as much commotion as possible. He sent his cavalry to scout ahead. Before long, his scouts came back, with reports that there were Helvetii all over the hillside, and Labienus was nowhere to be found. This was bad. Caesar abruptly threw his legions into a defensive line. Then he sent out all of his scouts with very simple orders. Find out what happened to Labienus's legions. They stayed deployed like this all day, prepared for an overwhelming attack.
Damn, his whole tactics went to shit, right? Helvetii is all over the hillside and Labienus is out. Maybe they killed him or something.
But it never came. Finally, the scouts came back. Labienus had been waiting on the hill the entire time. The first report had been wrong. The Helvetii had been completely unaware that anything was going on. Caesar must have been pretty angry because when he was writing his account of this incident 12 years later, he names names and throws the scouts responsible under the bus. By this point, it was...
Of course he's angry. He probably would have made some decision here that would have cost his entire battle, entire war in a way. Just because one stupid scout is a moron and delivered wrong message. I'm surprised they didn't write a book. Scouts, do we need them?
Near dusk, so Caesar sent a messenger to Labienus, telling him to abandon the plan and come back to camp. The next day, Caesar finally had to deal with the fact that his army was down to 2 more days of food. Some of his Gallic allies had been promising a food shipment for a while now, but these were Gauls of questionable loyalty, and so far none had arrived. But there was an allied Gallic outpost nearby, and if the Romans left first thing in the morning, they could make it there by sundown. That was the new plan. Caesar would get the food himself, and then he would continue to shadow the Helvetii. The Romans marched away. but unbeknownst to Caesar, it was his turn to be shadowed. Caesar had just begun his forced march to resupply when all of a sudden he had Helvetii attacking the rear of his column. He didn't see this one coming. The infantry at the rear of the column turned to fight, and Caesar ordered all of his cavalry to go and help them.
Yeah, how do you have entire army following you and they get that close to you before you realize? How does that happen? This feels a bit amateurish in Caesar part, right? Forgetting your flank, keeping your flank open so anybody can attack. I mean, doesn't he have people to look out in the behind that can see for the distance somebody's coming or not? How can they just come that close? That feels a bit amateurish.
There was a small hill nearby, so he repositioned the
Oh, wait
rest
a
of
minute.
his
I get it. This is, obviously it's not ground. There's more woods there. It's hillside, so maybe they sneaked near. It's not an open ground or anything. That could be the reason.
Infantry there and had them deploy for battle. This may have taken several hours, especially since Caesar had 10,000 raw recruits under his command. He put his 4 experienced legions up at the front, and his 2 inexperienced ones in reserve.
There you go. Like I was saying, Caesar saw a hill and just, took it. That's the best position you can take. High ground is basically always better tactical advantage.
When the infantry was finally in position, a signal was given, and the Romans who had been holding the Helvetii off fell back to the Roman line. The Helvetii advanced slowly up the hill, and the Romans held their ground. When they were in range, the 4 legions at the front threw their javelins, and sent their first 2 lines charging down the hill. The fighting was evenly matched for some time, but the Romans held the high ground, and the Helvetii gradually started to be pushed down the hill. Suddenly, a third army entered the battlefield. 2 local Gallic tribes had allied themselves with the Helvetii. They had been sluggish in their pursuit of the Romans, but all 15,000 of them arrived with the battle already in progress. In this period, it was very common for armies to commit most of their men in the first wave, in the hopes that their overwhelming numbers would cause a rout. The Romans were weirdos, and their system kept a large percentage of their army in reserve. But it was designed for more.
Yeah, what a weirdo, what morons. They're not going to survive, right? No way they're going to have a 1,000-year-long empire. So, this is a different tactics. I guess, it started with Caesar, right? Don't, throw all your army at first. Basically, keep most of them in reserve. I mean, it's smart because it's like, playing a Russian roulette if you just throw your entire army at the start. Because if something goes wrong, that's it. At least this way, you're still reserves left.
Like this. The Roman third line was a cross-section of the most experienced soldiers under Caesar's command. There were, at most, 6,500 of them, but probably less. And when they moved up, they stopped the 15,000 Helvetii reinforcements in their tracks. Neither side had a clear advantage, and the battle dragged on all day. Caesar held his raw recruits back. It wasn't clear that they were capable of holding their own against the Helvetii, and Caesar didn't want to risk it. The Romans kept on making incremental progress here and there, but it was exhausting work, and both sides were taking heavy losses. The sun went down and they were still fighting. Eventually, the Helvetii had been reduced by an astonishing 2/3, and they pulled back, dejected and thoroughly beaten. The Romans were totally exhausted, even in victory. They had lost 5,000 men, which was a quarter of their most experienced soldiers. Caesar's army was truly shaken, and it took them a full 3 days to recover and tend to their wounded. They had captured some Helvetii supply wagons, so their food problem was now taken care of. Once the Romans were well enough to be on the march again, they were immediately met with a Helvetii delegation offering terms of surrender. Caesar accepted. He had the Helvetii hand over all of their weapons, allowed them to leave Gaul with their lives and go home, on the condition that in the future they would provide fighting men to the Roman Republic upon request. They agreed.
Still a diplomat.
This was the beginning.
Still a politician, thinking ahead. We might need them.
Of the so-called Gallic Wars, a series of campaigns that began here in 58 BCE and ended in 51 BCE, just after the Battle of Alesia. Campaigns that began ostensibly to stabilize neighboring Gaul by restricting the movement of people, ended with its subjugation.
Yeah, alright. Man, this was awesome. But Caesar, the first video, his year Julius Caesar, we saw when he was in the Senate holding fasces. Basically, he did lots of reforms. The main thing he did was, make sure that two states, he became governor of two states, basically, proconsul. Proconsul just basically means in this sense that he's just a ruler of those states in a way. This was, I guess, Roman Republic still. This was Roman Empire that became later with the Augustus after Julius Caesar. So basically, around this time, Julius Caesar was thinking that vision, trying to become a military general, become an emperor, like how Alexander the Great was. Basically, he was aspiring to be that. So he was still thinking that when he was in the Senate, he wanted two governors, two state to govern. So he has, big army under him. Literally leader of two states, and just the hell of it, one guy died, so now he has three states under him and three different legates and what are they called, whatever, squads of army, whatever they are. And then he raised his own 10,000, included 30,000 men strong. So basically he governs three states, three northern Roman states, and 30,000 men under him. He can name legates of the squads or whatever. So he basically is acting like emperor already, right, for these three states. And now, in order to settle his debt, he's doing all this conquering and shit, which is already emperor-like. So he's already begun that emperor shit from here, right? So basically, he's gonna do that, and in the end, Augustus is gonna come and he's gonna take that to whole other level and literally create a Roman Empire, and he's gonna become an emperor. But it started with Julius Caesar. Even though Augustus is the first emperor, the idea started with Caesar. That's why, Julius Caesar, I think, is the proper first emperor, even though technically he wasn't. He is, because he's the one who started all this shit. Well, that was Caesar versus the Helvetii. Caesar, great politician, great military general, and great builder. Bob the Builder there, building walls and bridges like nothing. Well, if you like my Rick's on food, like and subscribe, check out the Rick's Saturday. There's a link in the description. Check out the cards with different plays, check out the end cards in. Yeah, I guess I'll see you next time.